ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome on behalf of the EUnite for Health ecosystem to this webinar on Think, Act, EUnite, a post-COVID-19 paradigm shift in healthcare, the first of many activities organised under the auspices of this initiative. My name is Jackie Davis. I will have the privilege of moderating our discussion today, and we're going to have an interactive debate later on after some short opening speeches and presentations to provide context for our discussion. There'll be questions from me to our panel and also from all of you to the extent that time allows in this relatively short session. If you want to tweet out about what you're hearing and get that healthcare ecosystem message out, please use the hashtag EUnite. So without further ado, it's now my pleasure to give the floor to welcome you more formally and kick us off to Kees Rook, who is Head of Region Europe at Novartis Oncology. Kees, over to you.
So thank you, Jackie, and a warm welcome to everybody, both in the panel, the moderators, and all the participants. We have many people online already, so that excites me a lot because the COVID-19 crisis has shown that we have an opportunity here, a window of opportunity to collaborate. And why is that? The crisis has shown what some people see as faults of the system, of the healthcare system. But I prefer, as an optimist, to see that as a window of opportunity to collaborate and to do the right thing for our citizens and our patients. With that, I welcome all the stakeholders because none of us can do this alone. It's not the pharma industry who can do this. It is not the European Commission who can do it. It's not the people in the country who can do this, nor the patient advocates and their big networks. We all need to stick together here, hold hands, and go in it together. Otherwise, we will fail in such a big mission as the Unite for Health team in the ecosystem is planning to do. And today is only the kickoff, right? We're not going to solve an issue like that with the magnitude it has, with the impact it still has today in all the countries in Europe. That is not something you really solve in one day. So what I hope to achieve today is that we start a discussion, that we come closer together, that we continue to build trust, which happened during the crisis more than ever before. And use this trust to sit at one table, to have one communication, and really make a difference. And I see the European Union as a broker, as they were a broker during the crisis. It started with opening up for the logistics, because there we had the first issues. And then very quickly after that, we could work together to find solutions. And in record time, we have brought solutions to the patients and the citizens in Europe, both from a vaccine point of view, but also all the logistics in the healthcare system. There is innovation. Crisis unites, and I've read a McKinsey article on innovation in crisis, and that confirms that crises push for innovations. They looked at the industry, and you see that in the healthcare environment is where the innovations happened over the last year, because that's how long it already is. So we've had a lot of lessons which we can discuss today. But the ultimate aim, of course, is to come to an efficient, but also sustainable healthcare system solution. And for that, we need a triangle. And I would like to use a quote from Maria Gabriel, who said that Europe has to strengthen the relationship between education, health, and innovation. And she also endorsed that innovation ecosystems, by integrating the knowledge triangle consisting of business, education, and research. I think that is a very strong quote, and that could be the theme for us today to look on how we can build that triangle in a strong collaboration, all in it together. So I also would like to thank our partners, of course, GA Europe and EuropaBio, because this is, as I said, something we cannot do alone. And let's be very transparent here. Representing the industry, we're still busy building the trust. So I'm super happy that we have those partners on board and all the participants today in the panel and all participants. So with that, Jackie, I hand over back to you.
Thank you very much, Kees. In case you'll be joining us later on for our panel, but thank you for that now. And as you say, this is a window of opportunity, you called it, to collaborate. How do we make that collaboration work most effectively to drive this ecosystem approach? And we will discuss those lessons from COVID, an opportunity, as Kees said, a moment to unite, but also a moment to innovate. Lots to come back to in our discussion. It's now my pleasure to give the floor to Christian Silviu Busoy, MEP, who is chair of the European Parliament's Industry, Research and Energy Committee, better known to most of us as ITRE, for some opening thoughts. Thank you so much for being with us, sir. Over to you.
Thank you so much. The discussions today will bring more close the change our healthcare needs. The paradigm shift in the title of your event is needed and it becomes a reality. It is no doubt that this is a moment of opportunity for change. But our engagement is necessary that this change would overcome the faults in our systems, will ensure that the patient is at the center and the innovation receives the boost it needs. I will start by making a very short radiography of where we are, continuing by what we've done during this month, and finishing with a call to action for the future. Because I really believe, and the title is extremely inspiring, it's the moment to think, act, and unite. While healthcare systems have made significant improvements to put patients at the core, the inequalities in health are widening, not only across countries, but also across population groups within each country. Costs in healthcare are rising, morbidity associated with an aging population is increasing, health risk factors such as obesity or other behavior risks are more and more linked with disease chronicity. Antimicrobial resistance is still unaddressed properly, and health-associated infections proved us once more that we don't have national plans put in place and implemented. COVID-19 crisis has clearly proven European Union's need for well-defined and adequately financed policy instruments, and has revealed shortages in the supply of equipment in hospitals and insufficient medical human resources, has deepened medicines and vaccine shortage, has shown the need of digital tools and services that enable continuity of care, and also the need to maintain access to essential goods and services in times of crisis. Moreover, COVID-19, I believe, has highlighted the need for boosting innovation and investing more in health in general. In a way, it is unfortunate that it took a pandemic to make out of health a top priority at Union level. But this is a good moment. People and the policymakers and most important stakeholders at the European and national level understood, the public opinion understood that there is a need to give more priority to healthcare, to health initiatives, so we need to act. We need sustainable health systems, resilient and prepared to embrace innovation and digitalization. Public health and the development of healthcare services should be a top priority for the policymakers, and funding should be an important component, both at the EU budget and, more important, over national budgets. To aim for sustainable healthcare systems, it is important to address the current inefficiency and use programmatic actions to also prepare for future cross-border health threats. The pandemic has also changed our ways of thinking and paved the way for more efficient measures against other types of infections. We have learned to deal with epidemiological big data more efficiently. New research networks for innovative research are in place now. Venture capital will be more easily available for development programs. The time has come for a paradigm shift in infection management as well, tackling HAA and developing better management plans for antimicrobial resistance as well. I believe that it's a good momentum. I believe we have to strengthen our forces and act now in order to be successful in the coming years. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Busoy, and so much to discuss from that. As you say, that paradigm shift, it's needed. Now is the time to act, you said, and it's a good moment because of the lessons we have learned. And I'm very much struck by what you said about strengthening our forces, that collaboration that Kees was talking about. How do we really make that work? We'll discuss that today. It's now my pleasure to give the floor to Mary Harney, who is a former Irish Minister of Health and a former Deputy Prime Minister of Ireland, to talk a little bit more about the lessons from COVID. Mary, over to you.
It's a pleasure to participate in what I regard as a very significant event this morning. COVID-19 was a wake-up call to all of us. And I think history will judge us on the extent to which we apply the lessons from COVID-19. Actions must start, in my view, at national level and regional level, but I believe the European Union is well positioned to lead. And there's never been a better time. There's the new pharmaceutical strategy, and the legislation for that will be next year. We've got to get it right. We've got to make sure that the main purpose of that, which is to spur innovation in the industry and make Europe a global leader, actually happens. There's EU for health. There is the beating cancer. And a very important, there's Horizon, which Christian mentioned, and the strong focus on the health mission. Never before has there been such a focus on health within the European Union. And I welcome that as a former health minister. And to be fair to the current president of the Commission, in her State of the Union address in 2020, she placed a very heavy emphasis on Europe becoming a health union. And I believe whilst member states will still maintain autonomy in relation to how their health services operate, I believe the European Union, given the budgetary issues that they have now applied to health matters and the role that the union can play, can really spur a change and in direction. We know that unique opportunities will emerge from the massive threat and disruption to our healthcare services. Many of them were rocked to their very core. Fragilities were brought into much sharper focus, and many of the healthcare systems that we all thought were very sound were suddenly shown to have huge weaknesses. I've never in my lifetime experienced such worry and pessimism. That was the prevailing mood, not just in Europe, but right around the world. And to date, the social and economic consequences of the pandemic are unquantified. I believe that we need a resilient, shock-proof, sustainable healthcare system. Innovation is the key to sustainability. We will not have a sustainable European healthcare system for our citizens if innovation is not at the heart of it. I think that I've always believed in the link between health and wealth, health and the economy, but I think that was brought into very sharp focus with the pandemic. We suddenly know that our economies cannot function to full capacity if our health system isn't performing. And if whilst the pandemic is an extreme example of the effect on the economy, poor health systems lead to loss of productivity, loss of opportunity. I believe the response in many areas has been quite extraordinary. I've seen collaboration that I never thought was possible between competitor companies, between companies and funders, between companies and research institutes, and the speed at which the vaccines have come to the market is quite remarkable in my view. But among the issues that I'd like to highlight this morning are some of the barriers and the silos that we need to set aside. For example, the lack of digital technology and data. The countries that had the best digital and data infrastructure were the ones that fared best during this particular pandemic. The Future of Europe debate begins on the 9th of May, I think it's been launched. And that's about the future that this European Union must take. And I want to see a union that is high in innovation, that has a healthcare system that's accessible to all its citizens, and a healthcare system that allows all its citizens, if they should, have access to the latest therapies. That is not a union we live in at the moment. And we do pride ourselves in Europe in universality of healthcare, unlike other places in the world. But we need to give effect to that. And one statistic I'd like to quote this morning is something that I was very struck by. 16 of the top 50 research universities in the world are in Europe. Between 2017 and 2019, they produced 120,000 scientific publications, as against about 70,000 in the US and 100,000 in the US in China. However, when it comes to patents, Europe produced 16% of the patents, even though we've 32% of the research universities, and China and the US produced 28 and 50 something. That to me is a lost opportunity. We have to bring innovation back into the way we operate. Somebody once said I think he was a former philosopher and lecturer in Harvard, Ralph Emerson, in 1837, he said, "This time, like all times, is a very good one if we know what we want to do." So what do we want to do? We want to ensure that our healthcare system is sustainable, that our healthcare systems are resilient, that our healthcare systems reward innovation, and that our healthcare systems provide an environment where all of that can flourish. And that's why I'm a fan of the ecosystem. There are many definitions of an ecosystem. Silicon Valley is one, but an ecosystem essentially is a mindset change. It's about people thinking differently and acting differently. And in advance of these programs that I spoke about earlier and the legislation for the pharmaceutical strategy next year, if we don't have a collaboration and talk to each other and agree with each other, we're not going to get it right, and we're not going to make Europe a global leader in technologies and therapies, which is what we all want to see. This is a unique opportunity. So many things have come together, and we have a commission now that's very focused on health. We had the financial crisis 12, 14 years ago. Then we had the refugee crisis. We've had the Brexit crisis. Now it's the health crisis. Let's learn and seek the opportunities that exist in a crisis to do things better and do things differently.
Thank you very much indeed, Mary. And as you said, we now have those instruments to do all of that. And that collaboration that we've seen during COVID, how do we make sure, if we're going to drive that mindset change, that ecosystem approach that Mary was talking about, how do we foster that multi-stakeholder collaboration? Lots to come back to in our panel, but to complete the picture before I introduce our panel, and Mary will be back for the panel, delighted to give the floor to Claire Scantlebury, Director General of EuropaBio, to talk about their vision and the case for change. Morning, Claire, over to you.
Good morning, and thank you very much indeed for the opportunity to review the vision that EuropaBio itself developed for life sciences. And it's particularly interesting to look at it through the lens of the COVID world in which we find ourselves now. So way back in the olden days when we could wear outdoor shoes, EuropaBio kick-started a thought leadership process with all of our members to create a vision for life sciences. And this looked at key pillars that allow life sciences to germinate, grow, and flourish. So how do we ensure that Europe is a strong implementer as well as an innovator? Because we can't serve citizens if we can't improve their well-being. I mean, I can't mention everything in the minutes that we have today, but of course, I need to remind everybody always that life science is a high-risk, long-term game. And so there need to be incentives to invest in the long term. These are absolutely critical. And they include things such as intellectual property, which is a really ongoing discussion, which I'm sure will be touched on today. And life sciences, don't forget, it's not just a pretty face. It is the fastest growing sector contributing to GDP, and it's a major economic player. So let's start with the money, which everything always starts with the money. So it's not going to surprise you that access to private capital for small companies remains a challenge within Europe. It has improved, but it doesn't keep pace with other global regions. So while technologies are maturing, there is always a greater risk of them being acquired from outside Europe or falling away behind next generation technologies that catch up. The vision that we developed identified the need for a greater understanding of risk mitigation for private investment and following European Investment Bank recommendations for a more unified and better capitalized market. The European Innovation Council is a jewel in the crown of Europe, with more opportunities than it can either afford or manage, and this needs to grow further, as well as fast-tracking high-potential SMEs through funding and regulatory processes. In COVID times, we have seen accelerated funding and fast-tracking, particularly through regulatory and large company partnerships. So what can we take away from this into a post-COVID sort of better healthcare delivery pathway? Skills and labour are always central to your ability to deliver, and there is no doubt that Europe has a very strong skills base, particularly in research. The European Research Council is absolutely second to none as a skills initiator, and the ability to respond to COVID and the rapid vaccine innovation is a testament to that. And those skills do not fall from the sky. They need decades of development. And now, as we look at the medicine supply chain, COVID highlights the need for sustained investment into joined up skills throughout the medicine innovation and supply chain. Next to skills, you have R&D and innovation. And as with skills development, Europe has an enviable track record. Mary has also already alluded to that. And we have a deep foundation in R&D. Our life science vision from EuropaBio recommended that R&D and innovation be supported more deeply into industrial development. And you already saw that to some extent with the Innovative Medicines Initiative, which is a really strong public-private partnership. And we hope to progress that now with HERA as well. So as we talk about how Europe progresses, it becomes even more relevant for innovation to be recognised and supported throughout the supply chain. It does not end at the front door of an SME. And this is very much linked to manufacturing, the hot topic in town for 2021. And it's extremely interesting to compare our life sciences vision with many of the topics now being discussed. The original EuropaBio vision focused on innovation, particularly for advanced therapeutics, and the critical need for key enabling technologies to always be pushing the frontier of manufacturing. But this was normal times, assuming no global disruption that we have seen with COVID, which has revealed the stress points in the current global supply chain model. The discussions we are currently having, including today, will reshape manufacturing, especially within the context of the Green Deal and the digital transition. And it will be fascinating to update the EuropaBio vision as the new global manufacturing ecosystem develops. And so I'll wrap up by saying that these components do not exist in isolation. They need a coherent framework in which to perform at their highest potential. And Europe, as a union of countries, can really drive this. We have numerous strategies that were already being developed before COVID arrived, and the life sciences community was already responding to try and ensure that they pull together rather than pull apart. COVID has brought a new element into these discussions, and the arrival of HERA, the Health Emergency Preparedness and Response Initiative, is key to that. It offers a critical opportunity to address healthcare holistically from the single perspective of what it must achieve and achieve quickly. And HERA could be a unifying structure into which multiple strategies have to deliver. So with that, I will wrap up, and I really look forward to the discussions today. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much indeed, Claire, and lots to discuss. And how do we achieve that coherence in the framework that you talked about? For the fragmentation of the European healthcare system now, an impediment really to building that ecosystem that we've talked about. So what do we need to do to end that fragmentation? Lots to talk about with our panel. Delighted to welcome back Case and Mary, and also to welcome Tomislav Sokol, MEP, who's a member of the Parliament's Internal Market and Consumer Protection Committee, Irena Norsted, Director for Health in the European Commission's Directorate General for Research and Innovation, and Dr. Bettina Rill, who is a member of the European Commission's Cancer Mission Board and founder of Melanoma Patients Network Europe. A very warm welcome to you all. Great to have you with us. Let me start, if I might, Tomislav, with you. Mr. Busoy said earlier, and we've heard it from all of our speakers, we do need a paradigm shift, and this is the moment of opportunity. Would you agree with that? And what does that paradigm shift, if you do, mean to you? What's your vision of the ecosystem of the future?
Yes, I think that we need a paradigm shift because the current paradigm is actually not working. And what is the current paradigm? Unfortunately, the current paradigm means that the main problem with European health policy is that we don't have one. So European Union has never had a common systematic set of goals and objectives and measures in the area of healthcare that it wants to implement. What we had up until now are ad hoc solutions, ad hoc answers to problems that emerged, like what happened with cross-border healthcare directive, which was adopted because of the case law of the Court of Justice, and other similar examples as well. So that is the first thing. So now I think that what is good now is that because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but also because of the initiative of the Parliament on developing the strategy of beating cancer on EU level, which was adopted then by the Commission, that now we have for the first time healthcare in the spotlight of the European Union, that it has become priority of European institutions, and which means that this is the first prerequisite, the first condition for us to actually develop this systematic common approach to the European Union health policy, and determine its objectives and what to do. So I think definitely that we need this new systematic approach. But what is also important is that up until now, this division of competences between the member states and the European Union was used as an excuse not to do much. But and it was always said, but we cannot do this on the European level because all of the powers are on the member states. But then when we see the situation as with pandemic, where we see that the member states cannot resolve problems by themselves, then it is shown that actually European Union has a lot to do. And when European Union steps in, things become much better. Just remember in the beginning when we had closed borders, lack of medical equipment in some member states, etc., and things started to improve when European Union took over the initiative and started to act. So definitely, so this shows us that the European Union, in the current form, in the current treaty, with the current division of competences, has a lot of powers to actually do many concrete stuff, and that is important. So we do not have to wait for the change of the treaty, which may never come, but to really focus on what we actually can do in the moment. So what we can do, so what I said, first we need a systematic approach. So we have a good example of this in the area of cancer. So the Europe's Beating Cancer Plan is the first document which really provides this kind of a systematic, holistic approach on how to beat cancer in terms of not just treatment, which is usually the focus of all the discussions, but also prevention, early detection, but also afterlife of people who survived cancer. So we can do this in many other areas which you already mentioned, like antimicrobial resistance. There is also the area very important of brain disease, brain disorders, etc. So there are a lot of possibilities there.
You've said very eloquently what we need to do, and I love your expression, the main problem is we haven't got a health policy. From a research and development perspective, Irena, do you think we need a paradigm shift here as well? Would you agree with what we've heard and how we create? We talked a lot about that innovation and earlier we talked, Mary was talking about the patents, the number of patents and so on. Do we need a paradigm shift in health R&D as well, do you think?
So I think we are already on the way in that type of paradigm shifts. What we have seen over quite some time now is the change from doing research and innovation in isolation towards bringing together the different stakeholders to work together. And that is really the key, how to do that. And what we see with Horizon Europe, we have already started to work in a completely different way. First of all, we are co-creating the program across all the DGs in the Commission. We're working with the synergies between the programs, because what's really important is that whatever we invest in research and innovation, we need to make sure that we have the funnels or the pipelines to make sure that those results, as quickly as possible, can be brought out to those who need it, which are the citizens or the patients, depending if you're working on prevention or disease management. And I think this is a really strong focus for us, that we really need to make sure that we are going to fix, so to say, those breaks that we have had so far and try to find this. And how do we do that? We do that, we have, and I'm glad that Bettina is here, we have the Cancer Mission, which is a novel example of how to work, and where we're going to work very clearly between the different programs to address the different, because our different programs at the EU level have different objectives and can deliver different results. And we need to make sure that we work together to make sure that we use all the programs in the best possible way to sort of build this jigsaw. The other one is to work through partnerships. And there, I've heard Claire already mention the Innovative Medicines Initiative. We have just put a new type of initiative on the table, which is the Innovative Health Initiative, where we bring together all the different health industries. So that is the digital, the medical device industry, the diagnostics, the pharma and the vaccine industry together to work together, because we also see this integration of technologies. We need to bring together the scientific breakthroughs with the digitization. How can we combine that? We start to see combination products. How are we going to roll out that in healthcare? What kind of regulatory systems are we going to have? What are standards are we going to use, etc.? There's so much that we need to do from the research and innovation point of view. And what's really important for me is that we need to bring in all the actors along the way out into the patients or the citizens, and also ask, what do they want? What do they agree to have, etc.? Because sometimes also what scientists think are really important may not necessarily be what the patient thinks is important. So therefore, cooperation is the key here, and it's cooperation along all the sides. And I think we We have some good examples as well. We have rare diseases where we already have created this type of integration between member states, scientists, patients, also through the European Reference Network. So we have kind of bits and pieces that we can look at, but we can do so much more.
Thank you very much indeed. And Bettina, let me bring you in here. And Irena, they're talking about the cancer mission as an example of this new way of working. Your perspectives in terms of just how much of a paradigm shift do we need? What lessons do you draw from the COVID experience in terms of if we do need a dramatic change of approach, what the challenges are to get there?
So first, I don't really like this, do we need a paradigm shift? Because it looks at it as if that was a future thing to happen. If we just look carefully around us, we are already moving. It's just slow, it's difficult, it's painful, so it feels invisible. But I mean, as Tomislav already said a while ago, just discussing European health, apart from general, what I call fluff, was impossible. But look what we have done in COVID. So we are totally able. And I think what the feeling I have right now is that we're surprised what we can actually do once we put our mind to it. And I feel there's a positive kind of energy coming from that we realize if we start, what we have to change is our thinking. It's not that we're stupid. It's not that we have the resources. It's how we use them and how we put things together. And to think more, I like very much Irene's pathways, because I've seen this especially, and that's something I disagree with Kees with, is actually that he said we have a triangle of business, education, and health. For me, research is a critical fourth, not a triangle. So I think the research is an important partner in there, because the new ideas have to come from somewhere. And I totally share Mary's frustration that it cannot be that we have fantastic research institutions and that this stuff just goes nowhere. So I am a trained researcher. I'm a medic by training. I'm a patient advocate because my husband died of melanoma. And I have felt what innovation looks like, because survival went from 5 to over 50% at 5 years in our disease. So for us, we have a very concrete feeling for what it should be like. And the mission in this, I think, is we're an experiment, and I'm totally happy to be part of an experiment. We never had missions before. I think it challenged everyone, sometimes to our limits, because you don't believe how hard it is to have 15 opinionated people in one room, tasked to come up with something consistent. I think after a year and a half, and I hope my colleagues are not upset with me now, but I think we have learned to appreciate each other's strength. It takes time to understand their thinking and how to bounce ideas off each other and to complement. But we have now spent an insane amount of time for a year and a half, and it feels like people say, so where are the results? When have we solved cancer? I think our perception of how long things take is not correct. Yeah. So on one side, I'm positive because I feel the movement, I feel the energy, I feel like there's something shifting, but we just have to keep digging at it. And I think one has to kind of, I think what we have to think, the paradigm shift has to happen in our heads, how we look at problems and how we deal with them. It's not that, I think we're often screaming in the wrong direction. We complain about silos, what we should be focusing on, how do we get rid of them. So I think it's a focus thing. I'm sorry, I can't put this more clearly, but I'm not
very clear indeed. And lots to come back to. Thank you so much. I'm very much echoing what Mary said at the beginning about she saw this all as about a mindset change. Kees, could I just come back to you? First of all, you might want to pick up on Bettina's point about the role of research in all of this, but also you talked at the very beginning about this window of opportunity to collaborate. Yeah. We heard there from Bettina some of the challenges to collaborate. She said the mission has been, we're getting there, but it's not been easy. She's found it frustratingly slow. What for you is the key? If we're going to make this ecosystem approach, drive it through multi-stakeholder collaboration, what's the key to it working?
So first of all, I agree with Bettina. So in the quote of Maria Gabriel, it ends with research. So sorry if I didn't pronounce that well enough. And that's why I like the quote, because it brings all together. And maybe we should talk about the square. But going back to the mission, I think it's an amazing initiative. Personally, on personal note, I'm part of the assembly, which should help the board where Bettina is representing the patients to roll out the initiatives and to really reach out to the citizens and bring it all together, because it is about prevention, cure, where possible, but at least treatment and then aftercare. And I agree with Bettina. We don't solve it today. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It's a mindset change. It will take time. It will take efforts. We will need to remove roadblocks. But at the end, we need to agree together what we want to achieve. And what I use in my day-to-day life as well, one of my one-liners is, you get what you measure. So we need to agree together what we want to achieve and then go for it. It's not like putting a man on the moon, because that was a single target. We need to do more, but it needs to have the same mindset that we all go for that target. And as long as we bring that energy together, it will work. And you've seen it in COVID. You've seen it in COVID. It worked. The cross-border, as we all referred to already, the supply solutions earlier, telemedicine, in a few weeks, it was up and running. And then the vaccines. My only fear is that we go back in default. You know, all the fast processes, all the bureaucracy which disappeared because people were going together. And I just have one wish, is that we make those processes sustainable, that we make those relationships and interfaces sustainable. And then with all the initiatives we have, which can come together in the mission, we need to set targets for ourselves and start to measure and go for the same goals.
Thank you very much. Mary, a reaction to what you have heard so far. And in terms of this, you talked about some of the barriers and the silos. When it comes to effective collaboration, what role can the EU play in making this collaboration, this mindset change really work?
I think the EU can be a leader. One of the things that really impressed me about the response to COVID, in addition to some of the things that were said earlier, was that science and evidence came before politics. And unfortunately in healthcare, as a former health minister, politics often comes before the evidence and the science, and the right decision doesn't happen. There are many inventions, including in the technology area, that have not been embraced in healthcare systems. They don't tend to be geared for innovation. So what do we need to do? I think this morning is a good start. I'm really enthusiastic about the MEPs that are online and their response, because you know, I don't like to think that everything starts and ends with the politicians, but politics has to take over to make this happen. And that's not to say that member states won't have their own competency in relation to healthcare, but how do we, the health data space, for example, think of the power of bringing the data of 450 million people together. Think of the research, the innovation, the change that could come from that. We have a resource that we're just not using. But I think it has to be led maybe by the Commission. I think the Future of Europe debate can be part of it, and health is one of the items. I think the Parliament has a huge role, but very often it's about getting the momentum behind an initiative. And it will be an evolutionary process. There won't be one big bang. But when I quoted earlier about the patents, that's in cell and gene therapy, that really scares me to think that we have the brain power, we have the knowledge, but we don't seem capable of being able to convert that into economic opportunities by way of innovation. And I think that is a great missed opportunity. And the thing that resonates with ministries and with politicians is benefit, economic benefit, employment, affordability, efficiency. And I see this collaboration, if we can move it, this EUnite, as helping us to get more efficient and effective healthcare systems. It's not always about necessarily more money. Some of the ways we operate, unfortunately, cost us a lot more money. The Commission now has the tools in terms of the resources to drive the digital agenda, the data agenda, the pharmaceutical agenda with the legislation. And I think that's going to be quite impactful. Okay,
and very interesting, your point there about innovation also. Innovation isn't just new technologies, new medicines, new treatments, it's also innovative ways of organizing, entrepreneurial ways of organizing the system. Tomislav, what do we keep from COVID and how do you see the challenge now?
Yes, obviously we have to on one side make sure that things go easier and faster and simpler, but on the other hand also protect the standards, the quality and public health in the end. So what I think that this has shown us that we actually, every procedure has two parts. One is the assessment, which has to be carried out in a scientific, serious way. But there is also the administrative part, the bureaucratic part, which also takes a long time and which doesn't have to take a long time. So that bureaucratic part, that pure administrative part of the process can be reduced, and this has shown us, because nobody is saying that the faster procedure for approval of vaccines has led to has in some way deteriorated the standards of quality and safety. So obviously we can maintain standards of quality and safety and make sure that that things go faster. So that's one concrete measure. The other concrete measure is when we look at introduction of new medical technologies, is that unfortunately we still have for the large part this put on the level of the member states. Unfortunately, we have the HTA regulation, the Health Technology Assessment Regulation, which was stuck in the Council for 2 years. Now we are seeing some light in the end of the tunnel. So we are now starting the negotiations between the Council, Parliament, and the Commission, and we'll see what comes out of it. But this Health Technology Assessment Regulation, I think, does not go far enough, because it doesn't include what is very important, and that is the cost effectiveness analysis, the economic ratio of introducing new technologies into national health packages. So I think that why not adopt this kind of overall approach, so that you do not have 27 different cost effectiveness economic analysis of a new health technology, but just one on the EU level. And also what is problematic is, once a medical product, medicine, is approved on the EU level, then national health insurance institutions decide whether they will cover it and to what extent on the national level. And the only piece of EU legislation which regulates this is the Transparency Directive, which was adopted more than 30 years ago and never amended. And this directive just does not go far enough in terms of control whether the system is transparent, whether the system is efficient, and it doesn't prescribe the criteria which have to be adopted on the national level. And I think that EU has the competence to this overall criteria on basis of the principle of non-discrimination. So that's one thing. So we have a lot of regulatory possibilities. We also have the cross-border healthcare directive, which does not work. So people who want to obtain healthcare abroad face many obstacles if they want to go to another member state to get health treatment. So there are many ways how this can be improved.
As you say, lots of different tools that exist. We don't have to get bound up in this competence debate. Yes. Very, very striking there. Irina, for you, as we look to take the good, as it were, if one can look at it that way, from COVID and learn those lessons and apply them, what do you keep?
I think there are some really important learnings from the COVID pandemic. One has been the value of data sharing and the value of open science, because it's very much thanks to the sharing of data, not only in Europe. We set up very early the COVID-19 data platform, which is free of charge. It's used across the world. It is interoperable with the NIH database and also with the Japanese. So we have a worldwide sharing of data. I think that has been one of the keys, is really to share the data so that you rapidly can get access. Everybody can have access and can put their brains on what needs to be done. But this way of system also has its challenges, because it is pushing a little bit the way that science is recognized. And this is something we need to think about, new reward systems. Because for a scientist, often it's a publication that is your reward, and that is what brings you forward in the academic career. But with the open science, you need to reflect on, maybe we need to look at other reward systems, also in terms of the value of sharing data. So that is one aspect that we really need to work further on and how to do. But we have seen the power here. I mean, who would have thought a year ago that we would have a vaccine today? That is also quite incredible. So it shows how fast you can bring science forward. But that was also thanks to a lot of the investments, in particular the mRNA technologies, which actually were really, in the area of cancer, but rapidly became deployed into infectious diseases now. But it also shows that you need to fund the whole way. I'm coming back to my funnels and pillars. You need to have a very solid basic science base, and I'm really glad we have the European Research Council, where we are really feeding, the brilliant ideas, and then that we have different tools to bring it forward. But we also need to be much better in picking up these good ideas and to make sure that they can go forward much faster. The other thing is kind of the infrastructures, and this is really important, so I want to make that. And that is something that we have also seen the very strong power of. And that is that we rapidly set up these clinical trials networks across Europe, where each country has a hub and where you rapidly, can go out and test new ideas, either therapies and now also vaccines. We set up the vaccine network incredibly quickly. And I think this is the key for the future, that we need to have this type of infrastructures, because by that, and I would interest to hear from Kees here what he thinks, because by having on standby these clinical trials networks, which are ready to rapidly make sure that you can go out and do the trials, should make Europe very interesting, for the development of new health technologies, be they therapies, vaccines, or other medical interventions.
Thank you very much indeed. Bettina, I want to come back to the patient in all of this and how we ensure, when we talk about collaborating, when we talk about this joined up approach, how do we make sure that genuinely this is a patient-centered approach?
Well, I think the first thing is that we have to stop kidding ourselves. I mean, mission, man on the moon sound all very nice, but if you really boil it down, it's a truly disruptive way of approaching a problem, namely starting with the end and engineering back, which we don't do, because at the moment, a lot of the discussions I hear about COVID is people want to have the cake and eat it. So everyone wants to keep the positive aspects of what went well in COVID. Regulations just flew out of the window. We can save all the money if we keep that speed, but please, we keep the price tag that is attached to our products. That ain't working. So if we're really serious, we have to start with the end result we want. And I think the vaccine was a phenomenal teaching example, because vaccines only work if everyone gets them. So that's, in a way, it is broad access by design. So I'd like to see that in cancer. We never get there. So if we started with, and I'm sorry that I'm now going to pick on you, because Ireland, for example, has a Novartis facility to produce the drugs. And we had the situation that the drugs were produced in Ireland with Irish people. It helped the economy locally, but the drugs were not available to Irish melanoma patients. And that's where I totally don't get it. How a company can be allowed to benefit from an ecosystem in a country, but the patients still die. Stuff like that. That's where it really gets nasty, and where we have these different interests. And as Mary already said, politics driving it and not outcomes. So we have to really go to the nasty, tricky bits. And I think that's, well, in the end, we'll decide whether we succeed or not. Because if we have the end, then we have to find a deal that works for everyone. Because if one person loses, the entire system breaks. So, and that's, I think, where the pain comes, and where we all will bite our teeth and hate it.
We are almost out of time for this panel. I wish we had twice as long for this fascinating discussion, but I want to ask each of you one key priority, key next step, and also who is it for?
We need an integration, because implementation in healthcare happens locally, but the problems arise at various levels. So we need integration between the local setting and European or even global level. And it has to be everyone's job to make it work. We push too much responsibilities around. If you have a good idea how to contribute to that it should be your job. So this delegation of responsibility, we should undercut and have a true sustainability system, like a subsidiarity system. I know this has a negative connotation in some countries, but we have to address the problems at the necessary level, because otherwise we will fail.
Thank you very much. Irena, your key next step, and who's it for?
Well, I think that the key next step is that everybody will need to step out of their comfort zone. And I heard this from Bettina very much. I picked that up, that everybody is sort of in their tunnel defending their way of thinking and doing. And maybe everybody should take a step out of that and start to look at the issues from somebody else's angle. And I think that would be really healthy for all of us. To look from the other side, so to say. And also I like this kind of a bit of backwards engineering, to what do we want to achieve? And then we go backwards and see what are the things we need to do along the way.
Thank you very much. Tomislav.
I think we have to define 3 key priorities on EU level and measures on how to achieve them. My proposals are strategic autonomy in terms of medicine production, achieve equal access, and to create European Union as a leader of innovation in the world. and determine which concrete measures can be done, and of course for whom, of course in the end for the patients, but I think we have to include all the stakeholders who have to take part in this. So less administration, clearer rules, cooperation with all the stakeholders involved, and propose concrete measures as soon as possible.
Thank you very much. Mary?
I think we need a champion to make this happen. I think everybody, I agree with Irene, has to stand away from their comfort zone and realize that by working together, we're greater than the sum of the individual parts. For me, data and digital are key, because I think so many things happen in hospitals that could be done at primary care. Digital is the key. But to make something happen, to take this good idea, as Walt Disney once said, we need to stop talking and make it happen. We need a champion. And I think that has to be at European level within the Commission. And I think the time is right to identify that champion to bring this together. Otherwise, we'll keep talking, and a year from now, nothing will have changed. And that would be a missed opportunity, which nobody wants to see.
So maybe take that mission approach, but say, let's put a figure, a face on that mission and the mission of developing the healthcare ecosystems. Kees, your key next step, and who's it for?
My key next step is to try to have open and honest discussions like we had today, like the challenges I got from Bertina, the questions I got from Arena, because only if we have this discussion, we can have that debate, what it takes to move forward, what it takes to get the drugs to patients in all countries and tackle the inequalities. And Ireland is not even a country with inequalities. So it's where then the company and the regulators need to be much closer together to make sure that this type of very painful events cannot happen. And again, we need each other there to solve it. And to Arena, it is indeed to use consortiums of who can do clinical trials much faster, high quality, trusted partner. And we have a few of those, and we are now even opening a collaboration with another one with 7 centers across Europe. So that's for the speed. And then I just add data and digital, also to avoid the bureaucracy Tomislav was talking about on the approvals time, that we need to look not only at the pace of review, because review needs to be done for efficacy and safety, but take out the bureaucracy and look at different set of data. For that, we need also electronic health data from the citizens. That means that the politicians need to get comfortable with data privacy issues. There are technical solutions for that. I'm not going into detail, but all the solutions are there. We just need to accept them and embrace them. And then we can be super powerful together. That's what I believe.
Thank you very much indeed. And I wish we had twice as long to talk about this, but this is, as I said, and you said, Kees, the beginning of a series of activities. So we'll come back to these issues, I'm sure, time and again. A panel, thank you so much for a great discussion and for starting this ecosystem debate on such a fantastic footing. But I'm now delighted to welcome Andrei Knotek, MEP, who is a member of the European Parliament's Special Committee on Beating Cancer, for some thoughts. Andrei, thank you so much for being with us, and over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Jackie, for the floor. Good morning, everybody. Concerning COVID crisis, I think it has been a stress test for European healthcare systems and also economists. To be honest, most of us, maybe no one expected the crisis of such extent, and now we have a good opportunity to think about how we can improve our healthcare systems and our processes. So when I look into the debate which we have held, I mean, the key takeaway, which was spelled repeatedly, was collaboration among not only all health sectors, but also among all stakeholders to boost up the COVID recovery, and also to initiate the reorganization of our healthcare systems, to introduce strategical changes, and also term often spelled was to create long-term sustainable healthcare ecosystems. The COVID crisis, of course, showed some weaknesses of our systems, but on the other hand, it revealed the true dimension of real capabilities and EU potential. Through EU cooperation, we have been able, and this was also repeatedly mentioned, to develop very quickly the vaccination. So what does that mean? That if we cooperate more in Europe, if we have more EU coordination, and of course, if we had targeted incentives rewarding innovations, then we can vastly contribute to create a sustainable healthcare system which delivers to the patients. Second takeaway from this very good debate, I have a link of economy and healthcare system. If the healthcare system is not healthy, then also the economy suffers. And we repeatedly mentioned that we need a maybe modern approach to collect data and communicate among all stakeholders to see what is the value, what is the add value, and therefore then we are able to target our efforts. Also, when considering research, we need to put forward the breakthrough technologies, which has been also repeatedly mentioned. This debate is a lot of along cancer, and I think we have a good chance to build on the achievements which have been reached in the cancer. In the last 2 decades, we have seen maybe more than 100 of medicines that are successfully distributed to the patients. So this could be a very good benchmark for also other diseases. We have mentioned political initiatives, so I'm very proud that the European Parliament was part of initiation of this Alliance for Transformative Therapies, which will definitely put forward all the challenges which we have through cell and genes therapies. Third aspect I noted down is, of course, access of the EU patients to the healthcare and reducing the disparities among Europe. If we want to have an effective cycle, it must start and end also with the patients receiving the medicine. So my last maybe comment is that the first milestones which we have now ahead of us is the pharmaceutical strategy, and if, of course, it is the beating cancer activities where we can address all of the challenges which were perfectly marked by my predecessor speakers. So thank you very much for leading the action. Action is needed, and I believe we will make European healthcare system sustainable and successful. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Andre, and thank you for that upbeat and positive tone at the end there. We also, Sean Kelly MEP, who's a member of the Parliament's Industry, Research and Energy Committee, couldn't be with us, but he did want to speak at this event, so he sent us a video message. So let's hear what he has to say.
The COVID-19 pandemic has emphasized that there is no welfare and successful economy without the healthcare sector. It has demonstrated the importance of hosting and thriving health and life sciences sector, which can quickly translate scientific breakthroughs into products and services for patients. To secure Europe's place as a global leader in the sector, we need to do more to make sure these breakthroughs occur in Europe to the benefit of European citizens. This means we need to build an EU policy and regulatory framework which is as attractive as possible for innovators to ensure those at the cutting edge decide to locate within our union. The complex factors influencing where developers decide to locate their R&D or manufacturing sites include infrastructure, access to skills, and the strength of capital markets. However, one factor in particular stands out for me. That's digital and artificial intelligence. Digitalization will fundamentally change how we think about and deliver healthcare and services. It will transform the research community, the pharmaceutical industry, and the healthcare sector. With advances in digital data, new paths for concluding research and clinical trials are opening up. New sources of real-world data and evidence are emerging, and new ways for patients to take ownership of their data will come to the fore. Artificial intelligence will be particularly important here. I'm optimistic about the possibility of new AI allow us to see the science in a new way. To make the most of digital and AI potential, we as policymakers have a duty to develop a policy and regulatory framework which balances citizens' concerns around privacy, trust and ethics. It is crucial that we get the forthcoming proposals to create a European health data space and a regulatory framework for artificial intelligence right. I look forward to working with my colleagues in the Parliament, the institutions and the stakeholder community to ensure that we can create an ecosystem that puts Europe at the cutting edge of health and AI innovation in a way that serves European citizens.
So Sean Kelly there, ladies and gentlemen, and we are almost out of time, but I'd like to hand back to Kees now. Just in a couple of minutes, Kees, some closing thoughts.
So thank you, Jackie. And with MEP Sean Kelly, I think we introduced even the next discussion topic. It is not about electronic health records anymore. It's about the data, but it's also artificial intelligence, because that can do more than man can do. And he's absolutely right. And if we do that, I think his vision, and I'm going to skip my vision, his vision that Europe becomes a leader in innovation in healthcare and in artificial intelligence is a very bold one. But it is achievable. It is achievable. I believe we should go for that. Then I would like to close, first of all, thanking you, Jackie, an amazing moderator. You kept us all in time and honest. Challenging, but that's fair, and that's the type of discussions I like. Of course, all the other panelists and presenters and all the participants for making time to be here, ask us the questions, and become part of that ecosystem, become part of the discussion. Because as I said in my opening remarks, only together we can do it, and we need to have those open, frank, transparent discussions. We cannot be all just hovering above it and just be nice to each other. We really need to go deep and have those bold discussions together. Otherwise, we will not move the needle. And then part of my vision then, at least, is with it in that ecosystem, what we want to achieve is what we call the 3 A's. That is access, availability, and affordability. And I know some people will be skeptical listening to me because I'm from the industry, but that is really together what we need to achieve. And it's not only about the prices, it's about waste in the system, it's about efficiencies, both in development, then the approval systems and the access for patients. So there is much we can discuss to really bring that all together. The crisis has shown us that it can be done. The time of challenge is always the greatest opportunity for change. So let's take that window of opportunity to jump into it. People are ready to discuss, and let's continue this discussion. For me, it is the moment that we can indeed discuss a paradigm shift, revolutionize, some people call it. I don't care how you call it, but let's make the change. So at the end, I would like, of course, to thank our partners, EuropaBio and JA Europe as well, of course, as I said in the beginning. Without them, this would be much harder to establish. And my closing words are, this is the time. This is the time.
Thank you very much indeed, Kees, and thank you to all of you, to all our speakers today for that open, frank discussion that we've had at the start of a long debate, I'm sure. It's all you've all said about collaboration, cooperation, coordination. Today we've seen that in action through our panels and through our opening speakers. So thank you to the audience, can't thank you, so let me do it on their behalf. And it only remains for me to thank all of you for attending and listening to our discussion today, for your contributions, and to wish you a pleasant rest of the day and stay safe. Thank you all very much, and goodbye.